Welcome to the show. My guest today, Jill Drader, author, public speaker, mom. What else? Tell me about yourself.
I would say I'm a journeyer. I'm on a seeking path a little bit, and it's to go deeper into myself. And through that, other people are connecting to that journey and asking how they can too.
Mm-hmm. Tell me about your book. And can I show it?
Yeah, sure.
I have a copy over there, but it's way out of reach. You had this one here.
Knowings.
Tell me a little bit about this. Actually, before that, how did you come to write this? How did you become a writer?
There was an inner knowing. I always wanted to write a book. And I have a locked in moment of memory from being in high school and being in the creative writing class. And I was partnered with this girl, Laura, who's now a film producer and just produced a film that's won some awards. And it was about women who go on this retreat and something like horrific happens. And Laura was like such a poetic, creative writer. And I remember sitting beside her thinking I'm not good enough or I don't know enough and I can't actually write. And to think that at like 14, 15 years old, I made that a truth for myself took me 20 years to actually put this together or believe I could write something. And this came together after I took 65 journals I've kept since I was 8 years old, and I read them chronologically. When at the beginning of the lockdown, I found myself in a new place by myself and isolated by myself and without my sons all the time. Suddenly I had this new week on, week off agreement. And in that week off, I had to do some real deep diving into me. And for years, people asked me to write a book about my life journey, about the horrific things that happened, about living through addiction, about having to find forgiveness, things I talked to other people about. But I didn't want to just write that story. Like it felt really selfish. It felt really egoic if it didn't have something for the reader. And so I started praying. And I started praying to what I call God. What would you have me write for that reader I don't know yet that's looking for something that they're attracted to with how I live my life? How can I put that into a guide for them? And that's how this came to be.
So you've been journaling since you were 8?
Yeah.
Is that the first time you read through all of them, or do you read them all the time? Have you been reading them?
No, that was the first time I read through all of them. And it was because I suddenly had boxes back together from 3 places where they were previously stored. So my parents had boxes from my childhood in their cellar. I had been married. I had stored boxes away from that like part of my 20s. That was just this journey of me running around the world. And then I had this collection that were more recent, that were like business plans and logic models and strategy maps and curriculums that would download. I started writing differently. And so when I had my own place at the beginning of the lockdown, I suddenly had all these boxes back together that weren't ever together. They were never together. And suddenly I started to read through this lens of looking at myself and my life differently. And I started seeing patterns of when I was doing well with my mental health and when I wasn't. I started seeing patterns of when I'd pay for therapists and workshops and specialists and think I was needing to find something. And I would find that journey over and over and over, showing me that what I was seeking to find, I wasn't doing the work to get a different outcome every time. So it felt like repeated patterns.
Did you always journal consistently, or were there times where you didn't?
There's times when I didn't. There's journals I've burnt. There were journals that were through periods of addiction where, I wrote about what I uncovered in them in a list. I had to dive deep and see what I was seeing. Carl Jung asks us to do this analysis of ourself, our shadow self. If we really want to dive in and do some analytical reflection on where we're at. When I got the journals together, I reflected on what my inner critic was saying over and over, highlighting what was unlovable about myself, highlighting what was wrong with me and how pain-filled my life was, how I was avoiding patterns of attraction, desires, lessons, assignments, revelations, and trying to fix things over and over. I wrote through my confusion. I wrote through loneliness. I wrote through abandon and repeated rejection from men. I wrote about missing my dad. I wrote about disconnection from my mom. I wrote about illegal things that I was testing society's boundaries on. I wrote high as a kite, illegible words and abstract doodles after days of no sleep. I wrote through addiction and obsessive behaviors, some very bad behaviors. I wrote through abuse, hospitalizations, women's clinics, and overdoses. I wrote through law enforcement telling me they couldn't help. I wrote through being too scared to say how I felt, and I could only write. I wrote through learning I had two selves, a soul self and a shadow self. I wrote through reflecting on how what I was taught is religion, not faith. I wrote to spirits and asked for signs and documented the signs and occurrences. I wrote to God. I've written hundreds of letters and prayers to the universe. I wrote to God or God with a little g, or spirit or universe or the creator or the divine, and I changed the names for it over and over. I wrote asking for help. I wrote new words like manifestation and consciousness and grace. I wrote about discernment and trying to figure and feel it all out. And then I changed. And then I saw life through a higher perspective. And then I felt life through a higher perspective. And then I knew there was a higher perspective. This is knowings.
Yeah, that must be really intense to read that back. And then probably a freeing experience to burn it.
Some that I burned, I didn't read in this journey because they were gone through the years. I have the 65 that I've kept. You've been in my space. You've seen them. They're in a wicker cabinet. I believe in keeping them covered, so to speak, so that the vibration and energy of what's in them is not out and alive. I believe that it's important to dive into patterns, but then do something about it.
When you're writing now, does the way you write or journal, is it different after reading everything?
No. Like, I am a abstract writer. I'm a off the lines writer. I have elements of copy and paste in there where I, scrapbooking, cut stuff out, tape in memories. When the kids started bringing home art, like, I would tape their kids' art into my journals, and that's where I keep them. I save thank you cards people have written to me, nice notes, like on my sober birthdays. People send me nice cards, and I'll keep those. So they become these archives of time.
Yeah. I've always wanted to journal. I've bought journals a lot of times, actually. Maybe write one page.
Yeah.
Never do it again.
Why?
I don't know how to do it. Like, it feels like I'm writing to someone that's reading, or it just doesn't, I don't know. I need to practice maybe.
Yeah. Can you write if you're prompted?
Yeah.
Some journals are better for periods of time that we're at than others. Some are prompted, and it starts with a sentence or it starts with some idea, and you free write on that. There's practices. I've never done this. It's called morning pages, where you, at the same time every morning, carve out time and and do prompted journaling or guided journaling.
Yeah.
I'm very free write channel, like just whenever it comes down. Sometimes I need to just stop and write, and it's on the back of a paper I have in the car, and I'll tape it in after. I believe that something else comes through us and guides us, and we don't have to write it. Maybe we hear it. Maybe we see it. It's one of those sensory things. But I think when we take 3 deep breaths and we connect to that soul self part of ourself, we have a responsibility to listen to that space differently. And that's because it has guidance and messages for us.
Yeah, it feels like I'm writing to readers instead of just opening up. It's weird. Even if I know no one will ever read it. Yeah.
And here's what I know. I wasn't 40 years old yet, and suddenly things I wrote 20 years before had relevance and messages to me to read then. So whatever we're prompted and guided to do it. Because most people don't do the practice of diving back in and rereading it.
Mm-hmm.
And if we spend more time on that, the analytical look at ourselves, I call it in the method I built, the OwlSeek method, I call it data for your soul. And that was inspired by Brene Brown years ago, where in some of her work, she was saying on her measures of shame is like data for the soul. And I believe we need to do more of that. And I believe even us meeting is that opening of that door, that creaking open of that door within you in some way, shape, or form to come out and through you something different.
Mm-hmm.
Be that what you prompt, what you talk to others about.
Yeah, this kind of thing comes up a lot more lately. I'm not really an expert, you could say. We talked about it, but yeah.
Are you scared of it?
No, I'm not scared. I'm like I'm not indifferent. Like it's not part of my day to day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The 7 intuitive principles take us from fear to love, inspired by Dr. David Hawkins' map of consciousness. And in the back of here, I made a workbook where I have each one of the 7 principles with 10 questions for each. And they're prompts so that you could journal through what you're in fear of or what you don't have the courage to shift perspective on, or where your pride and ego mask is in the way, or your inner nest self, which is the method I built in here, which is find that heart-centered place again, the nest, and find that inner owl,
Mm-hmm.
the wisdom speaker, and go there. Carve out time to go there. And that's about turning intuition into a verb to be able to say, I intuit. And you and me talked about that. Like you said, until we started talking, you don't even think about that word.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to go from that section with one of the prompts. And I just want to ask you, in not knowing what intuition is, what do you define it as?
I just don't even think about it. Like, I'm sure I'm using intuition. I have gut feelings and I lean a certain way, but I don't ever focus on it.
Okay.
Or I just kind of do things.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't think about why ever.
And do they work out for you?
Lately.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you believe in a light source or a creation source or a start of the world source?
Not really. Like, I go back and forth. It's changed many times over my life, and it depends when I'm thinking about it and what. Yeah. No, I guess. Not right now. It changes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you have a grandma with a belief?
Yeah.
And do you ever feel
Yeah.
like you can understand or completely disagree with their belief system?
I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I had to dive into that in here because the way I was raised was around religious doctrine.
Mhm.
That was very telling. I call it the doctrine of telling. And it's that memorized religion. That Lord's Prayer I had to say at the side of my desk, standing every day with the loudspeaker come on and some secretary hold the telephone, and then you get the screech at the beginning, and then we all say it together. And I always wondered, for what? Like,
Yeah.
why are we doing this?
Yeah.
It didn't feel like anything.
It's a little robotic.
It was robotic.
Yeah.
And I think memorized doctrine is the most dangerous kind because it turns off the dial of intuition and turns up the dial of force and control by others.
Mm-hmm.
And when we're in those systems, especially for women, I think it's stifling. I use the example of it's like a candle snuffer at the beginning of the church services where they put out certain candles.
Yeah.
And I always watch that, just the snuffing of something, the taking the light out. And that reminds me of so much has been taken from our intuition by society to be in these logic models or these logic structures of just system and form and repetition and memorization and doctrine. And so I ask people to dive deeper. What else? Like, what's on the other side of that? Because it's not just about that.
Is that the kind of thing you do at your retreats?
Yeah.
Tell me about them. Tell us all.
So in 2016, I was recovering from some personal things that happened that were awful. In 2015, 3 significant things happened the first week of July that had me burn out for a year. One was the digital platform I had for women in construction got hacked by male enhancement ads, and it was firewalled from the 200 schools it was used in suddenly. And another thing happened. A friend of mine who was diagnosed with cancer asked me to walk him to the end of his life, which was only 4 months away. And that was a journey I didn't know I was being signed up for. And another thing happened was a male nanny that we had for my sons put hidden cameras in my bedroom to watch me. I caught him physically filming me while I was changing from a pool. And we had to send him home on the threat of voyeurism. And I felt so betrayed, and I felt so victimized in the sense I was being recorded without my permission. And then suddenly I was asked to help somebody to the end of the life. And it felt like my life was ending in a sense, and I didn't know what to do. And popping out of 2016, I was spending more time in the forest. And I journaled this curriculum that was about nothing in the forest lives without the forest dying through these change of seasons. If we look at how the forest and how trees and how plants thrive, it's through compost. It's through things breaking down. It's through this system of the forest has to die for the forest to live. And I thought, parts of me feel like I'm dying off. Parts of me feel like it's fallen off and it needs to be looked at as regeneration for new growth. How can I turn this into something else? And so the first retreat I ran, I just wondered if women wanted to come with me to talk about this idea. And so I rented a hostel out in Field, BC, and I set up a retreat, and that one sold out. And then the next one sold out. And then the next one sold out. And between 2016 and 2019, there was 20 retreats and hundreds of people came through to talk about this idea.
I can see the forest being a lot more peaceful of a space than like a small doctor's office where you go for therapy, like in a cubicle vibes.
And I have this idea that we are better off doing 3 days together, diving into something like 3 hours, 8 hours, 3 hours, right? All at one time, than 15 hours over 15 weeks for an hour a week.
Mm-hmm.
Like, why not go all in and figure this out now? Go in, get the churn, figure it out, and then make a decision to be solution focused from the problem. We have lots of puzzles in life we're trying to solve. And I like puzzles, but you have to be pretty intentional about carving out time and space. I also like puzzles a lot because it helps my mind calm down. And I have to be careful because I can spend way too much time doing it instead of doing something else, wanting to get it done, wanting to figure it out.
Yeah.
And so I call that like the pendulum in our minds. And if I'm obsessed with finishing it and not taking calls and blocking everything off and canceling dinner, like I'm finishing this puzzle, my pendulum's like hooked. It's like a grandfather clock that's like, right? And we want harmony. We want flow.
I know you want to get out of here and finish your puzzle.
Yeah, I do kind of.
What happens at the retreats? Like, are you actually, let's come back to the retreats. You were a speaker before.
Yeah.
How long have you been a speaker for?
Around 2014, I was named top 40 under 40 for the Women in Work Boots project I started on women construction and finding more entrepreneurial connections and training for women in the trades. I got into construction as a secondary career for myself. Once I got sober, I decided that the career that I had wasn't what I wanted to do long term. And I really wanted to dive into what I loved, which was stone architecture, and learn more about that. And through that, another life thing happened where I got fired for being pregnant with my now almost 15-year-old son, and it was legal. And I had to go through this whole hoopla at Service Canada to be named disabled and not get a maternity leave and do an exorbitant amount of paperwork that I thought was unnecessary, but it was the only thing to safeguard me through, so to speak. And I had all these challenges, but I conquered them with these projects and the way I presented myself and the way I spoke about them, and being like, yeah, it sucks. And what are you going to do about it? Yeah, it sucks, and figure it out. Yeah, lots of stuff sucks. Like, you're not so special for sucking. Like, I think that's something we learn in recovery is like, you're not so special. It's not about you. You don't get to be that selfish anymore. And I kind of carried those things through what I was talking about, what I was finding struggle in my career and struggle in finding connection and belonging. And I had to face it with like, figure it out. Figure it out. Like, nobody wants to hear you complain. Nobody wants to keep hearing about the struggle. Nobody wants to keep hearing about victimization. What is the output? What can you do with this?
Mm-hmm. You really figured it out though.
And constantly I'm figuring it out.
Yeah. So at the retreats, what happens? Do you speak? And what about if people have come multiple times? Do other people speak? How does it work?
I have done different themes. I have brought different guest presenters because people did start coming multiple times. I kept the core curriculum the same. You come on Friday, what are you ready to burn down with your life? Mm-hmm. Saturday, we figure out how not to do that and come to the other side of it. And Sunday, put an actionable plan together you're going to move forward with and focus on how you're going to reintegrate into your life without going back to the way you were the Thursday before you came. A lot of people will go do programs or workshops or retreats and come back and never implement anything, right? In the not-for-profit world, we call these program jumpers, like program to program, but no inner fire, desire to like push forward with it. Mm-hmm. My hope was what people would take away from here and why the workbook's in the back of here, because we need things that we can do on our own for ourselves when we get back. We need things that give us that open door to what we actually need to deal with in psychology and what we actually need to deal with a professional or therapist. We might need to come to a retreat and go, I've been seeing this therapist for 2 years and I'm getting nowhere. And I need to see this differently. So what happens is people come with something and make a decision to leave some way else. And that's what I prompt people to do.
Is the book kind of like a guide to the retreat?
The book came out in December of last year, so it's only been like 3 months. And the book was to centralize and put an anchor and roots to the body of work and stuff that I teach from. It was to encapsulate my personal life story so I don't have to keep opening that wound, because some bad things have happened to me. Mm-hmm. And it's hard to talk about over and over if it didn't have a for what. So what? Life happens. Now what? What are you going to do about it? And I mean, we're all just figuring out how to get over what we can't figure out how to get over, how to let go what we can't figure out how to let go, how to move on from what we don't know how to move on from. Mm-hmm. And inside all of us is this shame piece or this concern about not knowing how. And I think we need to talk about that more. And I think retreat is a great time to spend 2-3 hours or 2-3 days asking yourself some important questions, diving deeper within yourself and being like, what do I need to get over? What do I need to let go of? What do I need to figure out? And figure it out. Mm-hmm. Make a decision to figure it out.
And I saw it booked up pretty quickly. Your last one?
Yeah, it sold out.
Like in what, a day it looked like?
Close to that.
That's crazy. So are you going to just add more, or is it hard to do them, like mentally hard to do them?
Could I create a retreat with a business model and have 100 people come and do it for profit and do it for volume? Absolutely. Does any of that interest me? Nope. These are intentional, closed containers of people who are ready to deep dive. People who are ready to put really hard stuff on the table and move forward. Mm-hmm. I have mother-daughters come, and they'll come from 2 different religious or belief backgrounds and are trying to figure out that harmony between them. I have people come who are running away from their relationship, are running away from having those hard conversations, running away from getting honest, and just need escape for themselves. I have people come who have built this into self-care. It's a yes for them. And when they see something they like, click, yes, I know I need it. What is it? Not too sure. I know I need it. And I have other people come who are new followers of mine and have connected maybe through me giving a talk on overcoming things that have been hard in my life. Like in addiction, I've been held at gunpoint for a deal gone bad. I've had people physically force themselves on my body in ways that have been defined as rape. I have gotten through some really hard stuff, that's hard memory stuff, through forgiveness and hoping that other person finds their path and their way to come to whatever made them be so off with the power and control that they exhale in their lives, really.
Mm-hmm. Can you tell me a bit about your book now and the principles and then the OwlSeek method, knowings, those core parts of the book?
Yeah. In reading my journals, I found that every time I went from somewhere to somewhere else, I'd kind of go through this journey where I'd be like, something sucked. Was I lying to myself about it, wearing an ego mask or being really selfish and trying to hold myself there for my own righteous reasons for myself? Where did I have the pivot point, the courage to do or feel it differently? How did I know that? What was that inner knowing where I valued and trusted myself so deeply that it's like, Jill, is this a good idea? Yeah, okay. Where is that place where I go ask myself that question? Who is the advisor that gives me that good advice when I go there and it's like, yeah, Jill, this is a yes, or no, hard no, Jill. Stupid. Like, don't do that again. And then getting to a place where I can forgive myself for even asking myself such a silly question or thinking I couldn't do it. Where did I feel differently when I made a decision to move forward or not? And how did I love myself for that, making that decision? So I found myself kind of go through this path. Then I found Dr. David Hawkins' work where he puts his study 50 years in psychiatry, psychotherapy, and tests that maybe there's some things in life we can't track, measure, and control in such a science way. Maybe there is a spiritual part of some of this stuff that pathology is never going to find. And he goes through some interesting ways of measuring it, tabling it, tracking it. And then I took it back to my own practice with what I was finding faith and spirituality are defined by instead of religion. And I put it all together into these 7 principles. Each one of them I gave a bird to represent because traditionally we have these like masculine logic ways attached to things, archetypes, definitions, stereotypes, or we have these emotional, feminine, intuitive, more woo-woo feeling things attached to some things as we describe. And I thought the birds would be a great representation without the gender pieces we're used to with traditional religious indoctrination, and move into how do we see this as a symbol to show us where we're at and what we're really feeling there. And so I put it on a hierarchical scale. It's in the book. It goes from fear to love on a chart, breaks everything down, and I didn't quite feel it. And I ran a retreat down in the Crow's Nest Pass. And I was driving back and I still didn't feel it. And then an eagle flew beside my car window and almost looked at me like, pull over. I was like, what? And I pulled over and I started my camera, and I have a 6-minute video of this eagle just in the field. And then it starts to do a spiral, and then it spirals over top of my car, over the highways, over both lanes, field across the way. And it keeps going and it goes into this elusiveness of the sun. And I was like, where is it going? Like, it goes somewhere it can't land. There's nothing to eat. There's nowhere to go. It goes to the elusiveness of the light. And what we know about the eagles scientifically, like they fly in an airspace that other birds lose the ability to breathe, and they can still go there. So they've got this mighty reign. And I thought when we look at ourselves and we do this pattern of the spiral, which really reminded me of the Fibonacci sequence, that we have this starting point and then it goes to expansiveness. What if the starting point was the knowing? We pull it out of the middle of the hierarchical scale and we make it the genesis point, so to speak, this nucleus. And it starts there. And any idea from us starts there, or any idea from the world passes back through those things and goes there. And that's where I adapted it to the OwlSeek method, where I look at this notion of like the tree of life and compost lower vibration things, lower vibration terms. When we're in fear, we're like a caged bird, but we're in a cage with no lock, no key, and we'll stand inside and scream like, I'm stuck, somebody let me out. And on the outside, it's kind of like, you could just walk out. But it's like, no, I don't want to turn sideways. I want to stand straight on and scream at you. And like, how much do we see of that on social media? How much of that do we have with family where we have to like snooze for 30 days? How much of that do we have with codependent friendships? We have to make a decision to move and say, is this my pride and ego keeping me there where I feel like the savior, the listener to this person? Or am I ready to move through to something else? The peacock is the only one I use both genders for, because the male peacock's the one we want to photograph. We love, we want it to be big and bold, and we want it to make its wall of impasse for us. And that's when we keep the mask on with ego. That's what happens. This wall of impasse. Hey, do you see this? Bright, shiny, right? But the life-giving part of ego, the meek, brown female bird that we shoo out of the photo that's in the background, that's the life-giving part of ego. There's this whole world in the metaphysical communities that's like ego death. It has to die. I strongly disagree with that. We need like the yin, the yang, the harmony, the masculine and feminine with ego, the the balance. And we're so used to a society that's just the wall. We're so used to these women in these corporate environments dressing up in like suits also, to look the same. I call it patriarchal puppetry. Like, we're so afraid of being too far from the cage that we're like, better make it close. And I challenge ourselves to get out of that and have the courage, which I represent as the raven, which there is a white raven in the wild. And there's some belief systems like in Haida Gwaii, where when the white raven starts to return, we know the feminine's returned. And I sent it to you. I found this like art piece in a thrift store.
Yeah.
That's from an artist from there that depicts this. And I was following this group in Anchorage, Alaska, where white ravens have returned. And it's really beautiful. Like, they're not sick. They're not albino or I think they call it Luke. I can't pronounce the word Luwak or something for albino birds. And it's not that. It's actually a white raven. So do we have the courage to see things differently? And something might return to us to shift that perspective. And are we open to that happening? And are we open that the message that we carry, like, ooh, dark bird, ominous message, like coming in with darkness, fear it.
Mm-hmm.
Are we willing to go, well, what if it doesn't mean that at all? And then the swans I have for forgiveness, because when two swans come together, we create the heart. Forgiveness is this co-creation of you and God, spirit, higher power, whatever it is for people, or another person, where you come together and you agree, okay, there's love at the heart of this, and then we have to part. I use this example in my workshops where people say, like, I forgive, but I don't forget. Like, that's like the swans coming together and then one eating the other one's head and being like, you're not going anywhere. Like, that's missing the whole point.
Yeah.
And then the white dove is for grace, to feel differently. And I find it funny that the white dove is just a pigeon, a white pigeon, but we love to elevate the white pigeon.
Yeah.
And then the eagle for love, because of that elusive high space, and the owl for knowings. Because at the beginning of COVID, I started spending a lot of time in the forest by myself, and owls started appearing to me. But I'd be walking around not thinking I was seeing anything, and then all of a sudden I'd see it, and it'd be looking at me like, I've been watching you for a long time. Like, almost like, you idiot. Like, looking for birds, and I've been right here. And it started to represent to me that inner place where we can get that wisdom center from within. And it's like we walk and we walk and we seek, and we're on these paths and we're on these workshops and we're in these plans, and we think we're on the way. And then when we see it, it's been there all along. It's just been waiting for us to come to it. And that's what this asks you to do. Find that place within the nest, define it, understand these 7 principles, and be able to put yourself there. It changes with every thought, It's not a one-time hierarchical gold star methodology. It's a where are you at with all the things you're thinking about? And then, for what? What are you going to do with it? And hopefully it's changed your life.
Good work. I'm taking a quick break.
Yeah.
And then we'll be right back.
Okay.
Hey, everyone. Thanks for watching this episode. If you're watching right now and you're not subscribed, please go subscribe. It'd be really helpful. Also, if you're listening on Spotify or Apple Music, if you could give it a rating, hopefully of 5 stars, but it's up to you. And stay tuned. And we're back. That's weird. I saw an owl the other day.
You did?
Yeah.
Where?
It's so weird. In the middle of the parking lot at my hockey game on the light post.
Yeah.
There was 2. One flew in. I just saw the shadow of it flying to the light.
Yeah.
Right in front of my car, like right above my car.
Wow.
Yeah.
And what did you think when you saw it?
I thought nothing. I thought I have to tell someone about that. And then I forgot. And then I was talking to a friend. So sometimes owls are negative, like a death omen, right?
Some belief systems.
Anyway, that came up with my friend, and I was like, oh yeah, I actually saw an owl in the parking. Isn't it weird that it was in the middle of the parking lot?
Yes and no. It knows something's there that it wants.
Yeah. I didn't think about it again. That was a couple of weeks ago, but
Do you know what kind of owl it was?
I saw the shadow of it. It was really big.
Did it have a round head or little pointy ears like a cat?
It had a round head. It was massive.
Yeah.
It was really, really big. It was like, it made me think of in Batman where he just sees like the shadow of a bat. It was just a shadow to me,
Yeah.
but I could hear it. And it was huge. It's like a Rottweiler with wings. It's very big.
So some people have a belief system that it brings a bad omen or omniscient message of death.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe a collection of thoughts become our beliefs. We make a decision within ourselves, or we've been told as children this is true. And those collection of thoughts become beliefs, become how we move about the world.
Mm-hmm.
And this call to action is to rein that back and go, is this true, what I've been told? I had to ask people because I found with some of my neighbors who live on a Indigenous land beside where the community is I live. And I thought, if we see the same owl on the same post on the fence between your neighborhood and mine, we would have two completely different belief systems about what that is it's bringing. I sit in curiosity and wonder and awe. And it could mean something else to somebody else. And I talked about it with a friend of mine from there. And he said, yeah, no, like that is what his family has been told to believe. And that's what it believes for them, that maybe a family member is passing soon or it's a warning. Mm-hmm. And I think in life we have our own signs of warnings. I have my own. It doesn't necessarily mean it's an owl, but it's like a gut check. It's a feeling. And can symbols and things bring that on? For sure. Should we have those? Absolutely. Do women have them more than men because we've been told we need to be more careful and protect ourselves and use our gut check when we're out at night in a parking lot? We're sold these tools to put on our keychains to make a screaming sound that are not marketed to you, but we might be leaving the same venue at the same time. And so what injection of fear has been put into us to make us think these things? I think that's part of the analytical piece we need to go into is this coming from a place of fear or curiosity or knowing?
My favorite part was the nest part of it. I don't know why. But you described it differently. Like if I just read about the nest, I wouldn't have thought you were coming at it from that perspective. I would think, I don't know what I would think. But when you described it on that podcast you're on the other day about seeing the path, the whole path from the nest, I didn't think of it like that before.
Yeah, that higher perspective.
Mm-hmm.
It came to me driving the same as the eagle, driving to the Crow's Nest Pass one time, where this whole methodology kind of locked in for me. And it was fall, so all the leaves were off the trees. And then in these big, big trees, in the heart of a whole bunch of them were these nests that are left. And you can blatantly see it. And I thought, what is this difference between bird's eye view we've been told to take? Like, I don't know how many business women workshops I've been in, and they're like, take a bird's eye view, 30,000-foot view of your life, your business, where a snapshot of where it's at. And I thought, that's like this finite circle if we're looking down, like we're taking a bird's eye view and looking down, and it's like this hole in the ground. But what if we're in the nest and we're looking out? We can see so much more. We can see so many more options of pathways ahead. Why don't we think from that perspective? And that was the real turning point for me for that. Mm-hmm. Shift your perspective to how you're seeing things. Stop looking at things like this. Unless we're looking at last year, we want to analyze it, circle around it. What is it?
Yeah, I originally had thought it'd be like the nest, like home, like a starting point, safe place. I don't know.
It is that.
Yeah.
It's that place you trust within yourself to go, How am I going to figure this out?
Mm-hmm.
Is this even true? This belief system I have, this collection of thoughts that I believe is true, is it even true anymore? And will I give myself permission to change my mind and say, no, it's not, and stop it? Stop doing this. Stop thinking like this. Stop repeating that pattern. Stop going to that place that's not good for you, physically or metaphorically. Stop.
Do you think you're going to write another book?
Yeah. Yeah. I have some big goals for this one.
Mm-hmm.
I self-published, and then I found a publisher to help me take it to market. But the journey I took with this one, I wanted to know the process on my own because you don't make money from putting a book out to the world. So this is like an anchor for what I'm teaching for the next year. So this is built into my business model for the next year for my business programs, my talks, things like this. But it was never just to push a book out, do this like strategy where I get all my friends to buy on Amazon at the same time. So I get some stupid sticker that says like Amazon bestseller because I've manipulated the system. Like none of that's of interest to me.
Yeah. What kind of message do you have for people who this is their first time hearing of you, and maybe they are now interested in following what you are saying?
Whatever you're lying to yourself about, stop. You have permission to think differently. You have permission to change the way you think. You have permission to change. And whatever belief or indoctrination or forced lens from your parents or forced belief system and cage you put over yourself, see that you can take it off and see that you can live that life and have those experiences and be that person. And understand that it might hurt other people's feelings for you to stand in your truth to get there, but we have to get out of the cages collectively. We have to stop just resting in what we've been told to rest in, and we do have to stand in those pieces of autonomy of self and permission to say what needs to be said and to be in that nest on our own. And I equate it to some couples who struggle to find connection and belonging, but will force themselves to buy plaid pajamas every July to have matching pajamas with themselves and their kids for a Christmas photo in December to make sure like the mask of how it looks is all okay. And I would ask you, is what behind that, what you want? Is behind that the truth and authenticity to you without secrets and lies and baggage and betrayals? And are you ready to have those conversations to free yourself from the binds you've put yourself in through learning about forgiveness and grace and love differently from a different perspective?
So where can people find you?
Instagram at Jill Drader, LinkedIn. I speak a little bit differently there, but I tie what I do into professional development. Those are the best.
Okay. Do you have anything else you want to talk about?
Yeah. When are you going to start journaling again?
I don't know.
Okay.
I have journals.
I know.
I'll start.
Yeah.
So awkward. I'm not good at it.
What if you started with the prompts in the book?
Okay.
You went through those.
I'll do that first. And then maybe it's like a gateway journal.
Yeah. And then you'll be addicted.
Yeah. I will. I've seen. I looked.
And now you conquer.
Okay. I'll do that first.
Okay.
And I'll report back to you.
Okay.
I'll report back to everyone. I'll make a story about it.
Okay.
Okay. That's it.
Thank you.
An hour.
Bing.
Thanks for coming.
Thanks for having me.
I just take these off and then
Okay.
it's over.